first one that jumped to my mind was the Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball Evolution. The thing was that I couldn't find it.
Really?
I've got every streaming service under the sun. Dragon Ball Evolution is not available.
So they've been trying to bury it.
They are burying that thing.
Hello, and welcome back to Gateway to Anime. How are y'all? What's going on? Charlie, what's up?
Hello, good to be here.
Yes, indeed.
I have a lot of anger about this episode, and I'm sorry in advance.
It's a passionate one. It's an emotional one. And to join us on our emotional journey is a very good friend of ours, Alex Williams. How are you, man? What's going on?
I'm very good. It's raining outside, and what I usually like to do on rainy days is watch anime. So I've given that up.
Yes.
To be here with you guys and talk about it.
Alex is an actor and a voiceover artist. It's very exciting. Thanks for joining us, my man. It's very exciting to have you on. And yes, as Charlotte mentioned, touchy topic today. We are talking about live action remakes and or adaptations of anime. This is a tough topic to talk about. One that upsets us all in the community very much. So there are notorious bunch of remakes, especially in the West. Now, there are remakes done in Japan as well, to varying degrees of success. They do it much better, obviously, than the West because there's less of a cultural jump. And we will talk about, we won't just shit on these terrible remakes, you know, we will, but we'll also have a talk about, like, why is it that they don't translate? Where are the mistakes?
Sam, are you saying that you don't like these remakes? Because I watch the remakes first, then I go check out the anime. Yeah, that's the way to do it, right? That's what you've been telling me on the show. I've been listening.
That's been my message since day one. Start in the West and go back. Don't do that. So basically, yeah, I mean, I just want to talk about a few remakes, talk about the strengths, pros and cons, predominant cons, and also why they can do it better in Japan. I mean, there's a lot of very obvious reasons why Japan make better live actions than the West, obviously. But I also want to talk about just where they go wrong and why. But to start off, Al, why don't you tell us about a couple of remakes of anime that you've seen, and what are your thoughts on them?
Yeah, I've seen a few. Obviously, I had a little look at, which ones I'd like to kind of give you a little bit of a rundown on, and the first one that jumped to my mind was the Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball Evolution. The thing was that I couldn't find it.
Really?
I've got every streaming service under the sun, and Dragon Ball Evolution is not available.
So they've been trying to bury it.
They are burying that thing. I mean, I could get it on Amazon Prime, and I was like, I could get it. I was like, $5.99. For that?
Jesus.
Not playing it.
No,
not paying
that's
it.
fair enough.
But definitely that is one of my favorite, Western adaptations of an anime.
My Lord.
Did you go to the movies to see it? Because I did.
Oh, did you?
I went to the cinema and I was like,
dude.
I thought, because then you'll get into the casting of this, but, I'm a big Buffy fan. So I was
James Masters,
we've got, we've got some Spike action.
Yes. Is that all he's done?
Yeah, I think that his career got buried with the film. They're just like, sorry, dude, like I can't.
Sorry, dude.
But yeah.
They buried him in a coffin made of the DVDs.
Basically.
No, I didn't do that. I've decided to do Attack on Titan, which is, a very, very, very popular anime, and one that I've sort of just gotten up to date with. So I was like, it's fresh in my mind. I know what's happening. Give this a go. How bad can it be? It's pretty bad. So I just, I'll give you a brief introduction to Attack on Titan in case you don't know what it's about, if you've been living under a rock. But it's basically this live action remake was made came out in 2015, and it's a Japanese post-apocalyptic action film based on the manga by the same name. Now, basically, the premise is there's sort of this old, almost feudal-ish kind of people living within these three walls, which protects them from these things called titans outside, which are giant humans that eat other humans. That's the basic premise, and there's a lot of other underlying themes that goes on from there. So the anime is very interesting and intricate and takes its time. I remember the first time I tried to watch it, I turned it off because I was like, this is horrific. There were just people getting eaten alive. A lot of screaming in that first few
It's
episodes.
a bleak watch.
It's a bleak
It
watch.
still is a bleak watch.
It's still a bleak watch.
I'd like to tell people it gets better, but the show quality gets better, but it doesn't get better for hope. So you get room for a bleak time.
Yeah, it's one of those shows that just goes from worse to worse to worse.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a bit like Breaking Bad in the way that I didn't love that show because I was like, oh man, can we get something positive at some
smile.
point?
Just need a win.
Yeah, so basically they went, this is going very, very well. Let's make a live action one. So they did that. They started in 2011 with a planned release date for 2013. And then their first director decided to leave because of creative differences. And fair enough. And then they sort of, the first that people saw of this was actually a car commercial where they had the animated CG Titans. And that was released, I think, in 2013 or 14, before the actual film came out, just to get people interested. And so it's a Japanese-made production as well. In Attack on Titan, it is very Anglo. It looks quite Anglo. And they decided, let's not do that. So they basically wanted to make a very honest recreation of the anime. And then the writer came in and said, let's not do that because that story has already been told.
Right.
Which, when you're doing a remake, you generally do it to elevate or bring it to a new audience or something like that. That's my guess. This sort of just feels a bit more like fan service, kind of for the sake of something that's good, and just bleeding money out of it, to be honest. I sat down to watch this yesterday and got immediately angry because I realized that there were actually two films that I had to watch and not one. But no, it sort of gets going pretty quickly. It's got that sort of very janky start where you kind of feel like you're watching theatre that's just been recorded. The sets and the costumes are very, very good. Okay. Like the production value is actually right up there, which kind of disappoints me a little bit more because it's like, well, you had all the stuff. You clearly spent, the budget's not online, but you clearly spent like, I'd say 25, 30 mil on this thing. And for that amount of money, why didn't you just spend a little bit more time just kind of making moments work? But I will say the first time the sort of Titans, the wall gets breached and the Titans start coming through the wall and massacring people and eating them. And when they first start coming through the wall, I was like, okay, all right, we're on here. This actually looks pretty good. These are scary. Yeah. We understand that CG, it's 2015, so blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But it just then started to fall apart pretty quickly. I got a lot of laughs, I will say. I got a lot of laughs from this one because they go out, they find this World War II bomb that's got that classic like American pin-up woman in front of the ocean, and they're obsessed with the ocean. They want to go to the ocean and they don't want to be sheep trapped inside these walls anymore, sort of thing. But then I'm like, okay, that's clearly an American pin-up thing. So I'm like, okay, this is our world. It's very much, it's very much set in this world, which is interesting. There's no horses.
No horses?
There's no horses, which in the original anime, they're on horses and their scouts are going out. Yeah. This, they just rock up in a tank at one point, which I was like, okay, where'd you get that?
What is going on?
I think that'd be pretty handy against just like a tall human. There's sort of weird moments. I guess it was frustrating because you've got all this stuff here, but the acting, I will say in all kind of remakes, the acting, it's like they want it to be a B movie. 100%. It's like, why spend all this money to make something look like a Hollywood blockbuster and then make these performances, and they're not helping people. There's these sort of comedic moments with this one character who is obsessed with potatoes.
Sasha, yes.
Yes, Sasha, who in the anime, it's a bit, but it's a bit that probably only works in anime. And she's kind of just in the background of scenes. staring at it like full potato.
I mean,
you can't tell if it's boiled or not.
I mean, I kind of love that. I'm like, homage to Sasha in the background of everything. Every shot, like, go all in.
It's so, it's very, very, very strange. And they, it's also this classic thing that I think you get from live action anime remakes where the voice actors on the anime will do this sort of quick, like, and then they'll have this massive, expansive sort of mode change where it's anger or enjoyment. I can't believe it, it's one of those sorts of moments. But they do it in their genuine performances where they're sort of switching between sort of saying something sotto and then just absolutely screaming up at the sky. But these aren't slow, careful close-ups of understanding someone's thought process. Right. It's just bananas. Like, it looks bananas. and the other thing is extras are just who's wrangling them, because they are doing the most I've ever seen.
Really?
If some guy has to walk away from a little fight that they've had with Eren Yeager and they are limping off. I was like, you got touched. You got skimmed, and they're just giving these massive performances. So your attention is just flying around the room.
Just making a choice.
There are no small parts.
No small parts.
Just small actors.
You've got to go big. But
go big or go home.
Take a moment.
It did feel like they just went to an anime convention, grabbed a bunch of people and went, come with us.
Get in here.
You're dressed in the right stuff. So those physical comedy beats, which in the right director's hands, if you have that potato and you have an obsession with potato, which I actually think is pretty funny, and you really bring it in and you have her staring at this potato and this potato staring back, and you can build a funny beat from that instead of her just being like, here's a potato, and then being like, the person's like, no, you haven't. She's like rubbing it on her shirt and then being like, oh, I love potato. It falls flat in so many areas, especially because it's hard to get comedy to work in something like this because it's pretty dire.
Yeah. It's a very good point that you make, actually, because I think one of the major problems, and this is actually, as you mentioned before, this is made in Japan, right? This isn't Western. So the cultural context isn't being lost as much as it does when the West, not only when we adapt things into Hollywood, are we adapting it from a drawn medium to a live action medium, which is a big shift in and of itself. It's also a cultural context shift. Now, it doesn't have that in Japan, but the comedy is the hardest thing to capture, because we did a whole episode last season on comedy with Brett, and you should check it out. It's quite an interesting episode, if I do say so myself. But it's extremely difficult to translate because they can't rely on that drawing style, the chibi kind of like, when someone is screaming, as you say, like having those like emotional roller coaster moments, the drawing will always go with it to elevate that hyper emotional state that they have. But you can't do that as a human being. No human being.
You can try.
And
they do.
And fail.
Yes.
So it's something that is a huge problem because anime comedy relies so much on elevated moments of emotional height, right? Screaming a lot of the time. And as you just perfectly said, it just looks crazy. Even when they do it in Japan. Crazy. I mean, imagine trying to do like Ouran High School Host Club or something as a live action.
There's a live action TV series.
There is a live action TV series.
Yeah, it's awful.
Is it a disaster?
Yes.
Yeah, of course it is. Because how could you have those moments when it's so intrinsic to the aesthetic? Yeah, which accompanies the emotional height. So that's a major reason I think a lot of these shows fail. Adaptations fail.
Attack on Titan's interesting though, because I've always thought when I was watching it, I actually think out of all of the animes, it'd be in my top 5 if a Hollywood production company did it, would make it work.
That's actually one of the notes I had was this is probably the anime that I thought, you don't have blue hair. You don't have kind of purple eyes. It's very dour in its sense of like reality, and everyone's kind of just looks pretty normal. And the design of the Titans is really strong, and you could do some great stuff. I really wanted the Titans with the running and getting some. They got some of that,
right?
And it's a horror film. Like you could do like a horror, like very much like a pretty basic first film. Like obviously the show explodes and it gets very complicated and complex. But the beginning when they first started adapting this, it would be such a good like one act film. You could do kind of, basically just in the walls with this amazing, I think that we talked about Attack on Titan. The villains are probably like the design of the Titans are some of the most original, terrifying,
incredible,
so good. And I do think they could actually work with CG.
And that first arc, all they need is the wall gets breached, massacre, and then they've got to figure out how to close the wall, which is pretty much which is the arc of these films.
Yeah.
It's really interesting how they basically they took a bunch of the characters from the anime and they didn't use them. They kind of use proxy versions of them. They change their names and they change a couple of things about them and say, hey, this is a different character. Like there's a Levi character who is sort of your sword swinging genius in the anime, and they just bring in another guy who is a little bit more of a villain. There's sort of these weird sexual tension moments thrown into these films as well, which aren't really in the anime as much. I don't remember. Like there's a moment where our protagonist is basically, this girl comes on to him and does that thing that all women do, which is they grab your hand and put it on their boob.
The classic move.
The classic move that I've never experienced. But he does that, and then, it's like she starts kissing him. He doesn't really seem that into it. And then she just gets grabbed by one of these things and eaten alive. And you're like, what is that?
What was that?
And then you also have this other scene. You have this other scene where this Levi character that's not Levi is, with our main character's love. And this guy's got that motif of always having a fucking apple in his hand.
Okay.
Which is just one of those things you're like, why?
Why?
Because Brad Pitt did it in a movie. You can't just have one apple. This guy literally takes a bite out of an apple in every scene and then throws it to someone. It makes no sense. People are trying to give him apples. I guess apples are characters.
They're fucking starving. That's why she's obsessed with potatoes. They don't have any food.
And
is this why he's a villain? I'm just like, what are you doing with the food
apple
shortage?
thief. I knew it.
There's this weird apple sexual moment where he's like feeding her an apple in front of Eren as this kind of alpha dog move against. Anyway, it's sort of just like, why is that in there? Why is a bunch of this in here?
Yeah.
It's not existent in the anime or the source material. There's barely anything.
It's frustrating because it was one of the animes that I thought would work really well. There was some interest in an American remake that fell apart in 2017. It's also full of flashbacks. Within the film that you've just watched. So in 90 minutes of a film, you don't need to flashback because I'm still sitting there. I've just seen
it. Saw it, yeah.
But it just, it's that reek of the room where it's like, yes, we know what you're referencing.
Yes,
you don't need to keep telling us. I understand from one film to the next, but it also just makes it look like an 80s junk film again.
Right.
They've spent all this money. I mean, they have this great scene where they've clearly built sets as well.
Right.
They've built the inside of a Titan, so you see him going through a Titan.
That sounds sick.
Yeah, it actually looks pretty good. He's in this soup of human body parts. And you're like, that's fucking gross.
Yeah.
That's gross, but it's a cool set. You don't see a lot of that anymore.
No.
And then they just, by the end of it, it just devolves into Power Rangers. It just it turns into the armored Titan and his Eren's Titan, fighting out in mech human warriors.
Yep.
And they even add in the whining metal guitar underneath. It's like the classic. I'm like, it's like they tried to build something that the world would love.
Right.
And then halfway through they just went, but maybe not though. Maybe we just make it a B movie instead.
Wow.
But why aim for that?
It's bizarre. 'Cause, I guess the reason animes are made is to draw attention to the mangas, because the manga's where all the money's made, right? And I'm assuming that you make a movie, live action, to bring people to the anime, therefore manga, it's another step. But one of the big problems, and especially the West has too, is whether you make it as a pure remake, as in not shot for shot necessarily, but actually just the full story made into live action. But of course, you're always going to have things lost in adaptation and translation, right? But this sounds like they've kind of done it almost. It sounds like it's not based on the world of, Eren, it's all sounds like it's almost all there. But why cut out Levi? Why do all this weird, make all these weird narrative choices? you don't need to make it shot, frame for frame. It's not possible. But it's a big problem that a lot of these shows have is that like, it's a different way like Marvel succeeds, right? Marvel has never tried to make a comic story, story word for word, right? They base it on the world of, which gives the creators so much more room to move. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's just a strange decision. And
it allows them to get an auteur to come in and go, this is how I see it.
Exactly.
This is what I'll build on top of this. This just felt like it was pretty frustrating to watch, to be honest. I do not recommend this.
Right.
And I will say, if you watched, I had to think about this. I thought about watching something that I hadn't seen the anime from and just being like, can I figure this out? Thought that would be a good idea. Just, watch one and be like, is the anime good? Because this isn't. Because if you watch this without having seen the anime, I think you would be baffled. There are time skips that just make no sense. None of the characters seem to have like a proper through line. It's a mess.
It's a mess.
It's a big old mess. And I guess the frustrating thing is that they did the work. They built all the sets. They put the money in and then they just stuffed it.
Because the thing with a lot of the Japanese live action adaptations, a lot of the issues are in them trying to recreate ridiculous character designs of anime characters, as you were saying.
Absolutely.
And the weird kind of
that's Dragon Ball Z. It's like the hair.
Yes.
But like, I'm thinking of Full Metal Alchemist, this one where it's like you have a literal walking set of armor next to Edward Elric, who is like just got that. It doesn't look good at all, and it's hard. But I feel like it's more to do with the actual design and the budget not looking schmick, whereas this does look schmick. It's even more offensive somehow that they had the ground, like it was there, and they just decided to like narratively fuck it up and also just change things, and it was just weird.
No, it's like, if they came to, that with like made that suit of armor look like Iron Man or, his arm look like Iron Man, you'd be like, yeah, the West could definitely create this, this story and get it right. But you understand when they don't have the budget that it's like, okay, well, it's a B movie. But this is like, no, it had the budget.
Had the money.
Made a shitload of money as well.
It made a lot of money. Yeah. So the first film made 3.25 billion yen and 27 million at the box office. So I'm guessing how much it would have cost to make, but probably about that much.
Right. Okay. So they made it back. Well, we assume. Listen, it wasn't a bomb.
More since then.
Yeah. So it wasn't a bomb.
No.
Interesting. I mean, there were also
second one bombed.
Second one bombed. Okay. Yeah. But I guess
what a shock.
They're obviously capitalizing off something which was hot. You know what I mean? Like Attack on Titan is still hot.
Hang on, thinking of the year, did that come out during the 4-year gap?
Yeah, it would have.
Between season 1 and season 2?
What year was it? 15 did it came out?
Yeah.
Yes, it wasn't the gap.
So it was when everyone was like thirsty for some
Desperate for Attack on Titan.
I think they basically started developing this as soon as the first season came out and people were like, this is amazing. But that's kind of what we're all waiting for, is that one really good one to show American studios and international studios that if you throw money at this and make it look really good, the story, the structure, the characters are all there. And then you have this whole, at the moment, everyone's obsessed with just name recognition properties.
Yes.
You have this massive audience
built in
all over the world. If you get it right, it's going to be huge.
It's true.
And it's so sad because the ones that they're throwing the money at the moment, like obviously the one coming up, One Piece, is going to be a huge gamble. It has to be one of the most expensive shows ever considered. Like, think about One Piece. It's all on boats.
The biggest world.
Crazy world. Crazy IP that I can see why people wanted to get onto it. But
limitless potential.
That's going to be really interesting.
Is it a TV or film?
TV,
Netflix.
Yeah, see, that's a lot less money you're going to throw at that.
But also, it's Netflix as well, which Sam and I are about to talk about, 2 different ones. And the Attack on Titan thing hurt more because it could have been good. And this is why mine hurt as well.
Yes.
Because it could have been good. The one I'm about to talk about.
Well, you may as well get into it, because that's pretty much me done for my Attack on Titan review, which is do not watch this.
Do not watch.
It's that classic thing where I go, I'll watch the anime. And then someone else will go, nah, read the manga. And I'm like, I'm not doing that.
Yep.
The new season has just started. Well, second part of the final season has just started airing, by the way, for those of you playing along at home. First episode was hype as shit. Get on Attack on Titan. Don't watch the live action, though.
But
You've heard it here first. But watch the anime. Very hype.
All right. I am going to talk about a Western adaptation of Death Note, which came out in 2017 on Netflix.
Oh boy.
I can't actually cope. So I went to watch it. I was going to say my immediate reaction was to throw my laptop through a window. Like I was so angry I started pacing at one point. And I tried to come to it and be like, I feel like it's unfair. I feel like this movie is considered terrible by everyone. Like it's not only a terrible adaptation, it's a terrible movie. That's the issue. So it's like nothing redeeming about it. Anyway, Death Note. So we've talked about Death Note in this podcast before. It's one of my favorite animes and mangas that have ever existed. One of the first things that got me into anime and very much a gateway anime for a lot of people. Anime fans are kind of the worst. Like we're very protective of our anime.
It's funny you say before because you're right. The first Hollywood studio to get this right will be rolling in money because there is a built-in audience.
Yeah.
But the flip side of that is that built-in audience has a high expectation who have been burnt before. So they're also kind of the worst because we all get very upset. And I'm including myself in this audience, by the way.
Yeah.
So, it's you're right, especially when you're dealing with something which is very, very dear to people's hearts.
100%.
I remember this because I auditioned for this.
You auditioned for it?
Yeah, I auditioned for this. I can't remember when it was. It would have been like 2014 or around then. And I remember I was so excited. Because I was like, I'd seen Death Note. I loved it. I was like, this is going to be, a psychological thriller.
Yes.
It's going to be really interesting. I thought they might cut out some of the demon stuff or do a good job of it. And I auditioned for L. And, it was very moody sort of scenes and I was having a great time with it. And I was like, I didn't get a call back. I was like, I think a friend did. I was like, and then I put it on for about 10 minutes and I was like, thank the Lord. This thing is trash.
Yeah.
I feel like we're just bagging stuff, but it's not a good film.
Anyway. Yeah.
I will get into what happened. Basically, Death Note. Anyway, the whole thing is a disaster. But Death Note is about the anime is about a gifted high school prodigy who one day finds a Death Note, which is a notebook that says Death Note on it. Next, he discarded in his school, which he sees fall from the sky. Inside are a set of rules that say if the person whose name you write in this diary will die. He doesn't believe it. He does it. Someone dies, and then so sets off a series of events in which the death god who owns the Death Note, so he can suddenly see, and he decides to become the god of the new world. And in doing so, attracts the attention of a very, very gifted detective by the name of L. Who
could have been Al.
By the name of Al.
Thankfully, it wasn't for your own
this
sake.
This demon also loves apples.
He does.
On the apples
the
thing.
apple thing.
Shinigami with the apples.
Yes. William Dafoe in this, by the way.
It's Willem Dafoe as Ryuk. So I will talk about things that they got right and things that they got wrong. That was right.
Yes.
But the Netflix one, they decided to go down the route of really adapting it for a Western audience. So they are taking a lot of things away. So Light Turner is his name.
Turner.
He's an average-ish, so he's the only bit where they even talk about that he's meant to be smart. In the anime, Light is like a genius.
Proper.
He's like the top student in Japan. That's why he can orchestrate all this stuff.
Yeah.
In Death Note, the Netflix version, the only shot you get is at the start where he's like doing someone else's homework for cash, and that's it. They're like, I guess he's really smart. He's doing someone's calculus homework for cash. And I was like, okay, cool.
Cool.
Anyway, the whole thing is they tried to make it a bit less high stakes is how I would describe it.
Yeah, okay.
I feel like what they were trying to do with Light is make him like a kid who got in over his head by becoming Kira.
Okay.
And I think that is what they tried to do, but it does not work in any way, shape or form because he has no motive whatsoever. The reason that he actually, Light Turner, pretty much decides to become Kira so he can get laid by the hot cheerleader in his school who's called Mia.
Come on.
The first scene that he speaks to her, he's like, do you want to see something cool? Shows her the Death Note. And I was like,
it's not a good move.
Okay, cool. Yeah, great. Ryuk, who very much in the series is like a guy, is neutral and he's meant to be the death of God. So it's very cool. When he drops the notebook and Light picks it up, Light thinks in the anime that he is he's been selected. But actually, Ryuk, there's a whole moment where he's like, I was just bored, so I dropped it. I didn't know who'd pick it up. And he doesn't give him any hints. He doesn't help him at all because he is very much just there because he's bored. This Ryuk, literally when he first appears, And I really recommend you look up on YouTube Light's reaction to Ryuk live action versus anime, because the live action is like, it's the funniest thing I've ever seen. He's in detention. There's like always lightning goes off and there's like this glowing monster, and then he like screams and falls over marbles, like a slapstick thing.
Oh,
like
that's
screams
right.
and runs around. It's like,
right.
"Ah!" And then in the anime, he's like, yes, I was expecting you. Like literally, he's just like, I figured as much. There must. He's like, because like, he's like studied the. This doesn't even bother showing Light trying to figure out anything about the Death Note. He just like writes something. They tried to make it like a Final Destination vibe. So the heart attack thing's kind of gone. It's like he creates ways, like the first person he kills with the Death Note. I'm just going to spoil it because I don't want to put you through this. The first thing that he does to test, because Ryuk encourages him to do so, to test it out, is he looks out the window and there's this schoolyard bully. It's just a guy who's in high school who's just a bully. And what he's doing is he's actually like throwing this girl's bag around. He's like, hey there, loser, like just a bully. And he writes in whatever his name is, gets decapitated. And then that happens, like Final Destination style, like you see like this shock happens and there's like someone drops a basketball, then the truck does this and then a ladder goes through his head and it explodes all over the window. And I was like, okay, yeah, that was an overreaction. Like what, like did that kid deserve to get decapitated? Like, I mean, he's pretty of an asshole, but like that's a lot.
So this is just now a normal kid who turns into a psychopath because he gets a book.
Yeah.
Well, like it's also that idea of going, there's too much stakes in this story.
100%.
Let's bring it back. It's why, man? That's what you want. That's what you're trying to build.
100%.
Yes.
You build
Stakes.
motive and interest. This a guy who's a revolutionary.
Yeah.
And you kind of, the fun part about it is building an idea where the audience go, maybe he's right.
Yeah.
Maybe he should kill
yes,
those people.
100%.
And he's the
And
antagonist.
you just do that. And
100%.
go, no, let's just make it a bit of like God, this is cool superpower for a bit.
I think they really chickened out with having Light be an antagonist. I think they really bitched out on it because basically they introduced this female character to be the one that actually is the brains behind it. So so she's like the sociopathic girlfriend who wants to go through and wants to kill more people. She wants to kill the FBI
But then
agent.
it just
She's the mastermind.
alleviates any blame or
100%.
anything from so it becomes sort of a weird revenge fantasy kind of.
The bit where there's a montage when they're killing people and they're like having sex and they're like getting off on it.
I do that though. I do that. I do that. I'm not sure if the book's doing
I'm not sure if it's
but
doing,
I'm definitely
but-
writing.
I mean, standard.
It's hard.
Yeah. Pandemic was tough.
Yeah,
Tough time, man.
I think one thing though is if they decided, it honestly made me go like, this isn't Light. Like it isn't Light.
No.
At all. This isn't Ryuk. This isn't any of them. They just like got the names and went, here you go.
Yeah.
And I went, all right, that could have worked honestly, but just make it a Death Note adventure. Like just do a Death Note in American high school and don't insult the fans as much because all the rules of the Death Note they threw out the window. So like all of this shit, basically, they just make up or they'd suddenly decide that the note has these weird powers that are only like plot. Like in the anime, it's so clear. You have 2 pages of rules and they say what they are.
Yeah.
And like, they're kind of, and that's like, I just feel like the whole joy of, and the whole reason everyone likes the show is the cat and mouse dynamic between L and Light.
Yes.
So in order to make that work, they tried to make it like kid in over his head, but then they have to introduce L. So suddenly this kid who's showing no aptitude for being smart whatsoever has to pull off these like big brained moves that make no sense. So there's no motive for him. There's like, the exposition is he's like, it was really bad when mum was murdered and the murderer got away with it. And that's why he's a killer now. Like they were just like, they made this. And that happened in the first scene, like over dinner with his detective father. Like it was pretty funny, like the exposition. He's like, Dad, how can you go to work when killers walk free?
Because I'm a detective trying to put him away.
And he's like,
That's my job, mate.
It was so bad. But then,
Shit.
the actor playing L, I'll get into the cast in a second because I do think that this is a good proof on you can have good actors and it doesn't matter how good they are. The script is bad, they're fucked. Because Margaret Qualley's in it as Mia, and she's an amazing actor.
Oh, wow.
She's one of my favorites. Like, she's in Maid, she's incredible. She's in Fosse Verdon. She's an Emmy Award nominated actor, Golden Globe nominated actor, and my God, you would not know. And I just want to say, because I can't sum up my summary of it better than the person who I found on Reddit, who I'll have to credit, user fish_Grilson from 4 years ago. Thank you.
Fish Grilson.
This is his description of it. This movie is like if Twilight fucked a C-average film student who had once overheard 2 people talking about Death Note.
That's Incredible. I was
Accurate.
on
Wow.
Foxtel the other day and flicking down, and I saw Twilight was on, and I just went, "Oh, have a little look." It was that classroom scene where they, I don't know
yes.
what you're.
Is that when he
talking about,
smells her when she
Edward.
walks in?
Yeah, it's
Best moment.
It's weird, but it was that because I was thinking about this. I was going, "This is kind of what anime films look like."
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
It had that vibe of because it was a fantasy like.
Yeah, it was a novel.
But then it sort of got turned into this. Basically, it wasn't a big budget on the first one at all.
No.
And it's very strange. It's got that B movie vibe. And I went, this is kind of similar to what we
It's a lot of these remakes.
to what we get, and it's not good enough.
No.
Anyway, so yeah,
That's just-
Twilight, I reckon you could chuck right in there
Absolutely.
with these and be like, yeah, it's pretty at home.
What happened was whoever directed it, whose name I have got here, so I'll give credit where credit is due because he needs to be named and shamed for his film.
That's not credit.
Yeah, so Adam Wingard is his name. Yes, he's done a bunch of things actually, but I do think that maybe they tried to put romance and sex into it. They tried to set it into a teenage, like American high school setting, blah, 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 because they didn't want to do anything that wasn't like a tried and tested teen flick. They tried to make it that.
Got it all wrong.
Because and they took away what was actually what people liked about Death Note, which was the clever kind of like morally ambiguous situation. That
Yes.
I think
And
that Hollywood were afraid to go down that path. And I wonder if, because aesthetically, I feel like he would have looked at a picture of Ryuk and been like, aesthetically, like emo culture. So I'm going to like
100%.
put in like a gothy looking girl who's like, and not even me, so like not even like that, but like, that's not what Death Note is. Like, yes, it has a dated style.
Oh, yeah.
But we don't watch it because we like that. We watch Death Note because of the dynamics between the characters and an
Yes.
insane protagonist.
It has sort of producers' fingers all over it, going, "Nah, get rid of this, get rid of this.
100%.
We don't really care about the source material," sort of stuff.
You can see the
need
writers
people
around.
who are super passionate to make these things work.
Yes, you
And there
do.
was the reason it angered a lot of people so much is the complete disregard for the source material.
Yes.
And I think that it showed that they liked the mechanic of the Death Note, which is fair because it's a sick mechanic of a thing, but
Yeah.
that's it. And they went, this is really popular and I don't really understand. I don't want to try and get to the heart of it. So it showed a disregard. And the casting of Nat Wolff as Light Turner, he is a doofus, essentially. Like, I'm sorry, but he's like, the character's just like, do. And I was like, oh my God, what happened here? Like, how did this happen? The guy playing L gave it a really good go. And I think he's good, but I'm sorry, once the writing has L running with a gun behind Light through an alley in a car
What?
chase,
What?
you've got the character wrong. Like the writing of the character's wrong.
I haven't seen it. Full disclosure. I did
At
turn
what
it on
point-
years ago, and I got like 2 minutes in, and like Charlotte, I'm like, I didn't pick it for this show, for this particular podcast because I couldn't do it to myself. I got about 2 minutes in and just went, no, can't do it. It was
At one
all
moment,
wrong.
he writes Watari in the Death Note. He doesn't say his last name, and it works. I'm like, is Watari like Madonna? I was like, how does that work?
I do think it's interesting though, that source material discussion, because I do think, you can if you can take the premise and the rules from Death Note and put it in a different place, you can get a really good film out of
It's a
it.
version of it where it works.
But just
right?
you just say this is our Death Note story.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
don't call it Death Note.
Based on the universe of or whatever.
I just think we get a bit more creative because that's what people love about, Marvel, DC is you build a universe where there are rules.
Yep.
These people can do these things.
Yep.
And actually, this is much deeper than any of that stuff. The cat and mouse game is really interesting. The moral kind of
Ambiguity,
compass
yeah.
with both of these characters and what should and shouldn't happen. And they just he's falling over marbles and getting chased, through
And
the
banging
streets.
cheerleaders.
There
like-
shouldn't be any real
God.
action scenes.
No.
It should be like a hacker film.
Yeah.
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 It should just
Yeah,
be
Mr. Robot's a more accurate.
Yeah, exactly.
like,
Mr.
aesthetic.
Robot.
Yeah.
There's no romance in Death Note.
Nope.
He
Light
only
is a-
ever
Light
does
is like-
anything to gain power. And this one, like having, it's obviously they just weren't capable. They're just like, we've got a female. We've got a beautiful leading lady. We've got to put some, put something in here. Like, Warning Rain. You're like,
It's
what?
it's a classic
They
problem.
fuck on the book.
They do. It's pretty hot. It's important to note that there are actually a couple of live action Death Note adaptations in Japan. So there was
Yes.
the 2005 and 2006 movies that I've seen, and they are, Like they're adorably dated now. Like Ryuk literally looks like a PlayStation 2 like screensaver. Like when he rocks up, he's just like doo-doo-doo. But the actor playing L in that is like they transported.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Honestly, it's ridiculous, but it's way more. If you're after something that is more loyal to the source material, the original movies they're in Japanese. And there was also a 2015 drama series made about it, which I haven't watched yet, but I've heard mixed things. I don't mind it if you change things up, but just don't disregard the entire lore of everything and then just like do a weird, and also just make a good movie. The movie itself is bad. So Death Note, Netflix gets like a 0.5 out of 50 from me. I don't even know.
It is the sort of one that you can see working on a small budget as a TV 2-part or 6-part series.
Yeah, miniseries.
Where, even if you change the God of Death, to be, just appearing on his devices or something.
Yeah,
it doesn't need to be this CG monster. It can just be a voice.
100%.
And then you get another sort of idea of
just like shadow voice.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be
so many ways you could
the full
do it.
thing. You feel like there's a good with the right writer. There's it's good source material.
Get the guy from Pan's Labyrinth who directed it to make room.
Guillermo del Toro.
Well, that'd be sick.
Well, what's interesting actually? Speaking of Guillermo del Toro and live action adaptations, he has the rights to Naoki Urasawa's Monster with HBO, which is one of the shows which would translate unbelievably well because it's not aesthetically over the top like most anime, like Death Note or Fullmetal Alchemist or Attack on Titan or anything. It's just a very psychological drama and set in Europe in the 80s. I hope that happens because that one would work perfectly. Before we move on, I've got a quote here from a guy called Justin Savakis from Anime News Network.
Not from Reddit, not some random news that I found.
No.
That was perfect.
Hey, that was actually
Johnny
great.
Simple,
That's a goddamn good quote. But no, just because again, I want to talk before I jump into my show, which is much more recent and has been adapted with love and for better or worse. But before I get to that, again, talking about like where things go on wrong. So yours is obviously an adaptation problem and yours is just they've got it completely wrong.
They just misfired it.
They just misfired it.
They
got it completely. They took the wrong elements and put them all into the wrong place.
Except for casting
right?
Willem Dafoe is a great voice, but they fucked the character up. So what's the point?
And here is a quote from Justin Savakis from
That's where
Anime
the
News
budget
Network.
went, by the way.
Yeah, straight to Defoe. American comics work well for movies because while every outing is technically part of a large narrative and cinematic universe, most characters and backstories are relatively simple and easy to explain. Most of them are set in an America not much different from our own. Not much time has to be spent on world building, establishing a huge cast or complicated rules. But most importantly, very few of them actually faithfully recreate a long, complicated story arc from the comics. Marvel movies are very, very loosely adapted from long-running stories they're based on. So that is why Marvel has worked. Because yes, I think Iron Man 3 is based quite heavily off one of the Warren Ellis stories, but that's about it. Most of them are just real pulling stories from all left, right, and center because they are, whereas these are either they try too hard to adapt what is, for example, Avatar: The Last Airbender, which isn't an anime, I know, but it's an animated show which they tried to do live action, notoriously bad as well, M. Night Shyamalan.
And they're doing it again.
They're doing it again.
They're doing a TV series.
Yes, so that makes more sense because the fault of that was they tried to condense the entire first arc into a 2-hour movie. It's never going to happen. That's a terrible mistake 101 when you are adapting into live action, is too much too soon. And it's just like you can't tell the rich, nuanced story when you're trying to cram it all into 2 hours. It's just, and same with a novel or whatever you're adapting, right? Like you just can't do it. So that's a big mistake they make. One is the dodgy CGI, which we see fucking everywhere. Terrible. I mean, sounds like Attack on Titans isn't that bad.
Well, it gets worse.
Yeah,
it sort of starts well and then you're like, oh God, they've run out of money.
So that's another big problem with it. The comedy, as we mentioned before, almost impossible to translate because of the style. And of course, basically disregarding the source material.
I also think a big problem with any action-based one is that no one looks as cool as something that's animated ever.
Correct. Yes.
And I think this is really obvious in one that was actually pretty good. Alita Battle Angel.
One of the better ones.
Was actually pretty good. And I maintain that it was good because she looks, I don't know if you've seen the footage of the actual adaptation, but she looks like she's an anime character because they've got huge CGI eyes on her. So when she fights, she looks fucking awesome. And you're like, oh my God, great. But then the other characters who just look like humans look lol. So I was like, all right, here's the problem again.
The amount of money that they spent on that film is astronomical.
Insane. But it's good.
You're right with the sort of simple arcs that build into, why Marvel works. And that's exactly why, Justice League, whatever, didn't work because
Yeah,
they just
yes.
went, rah, rah,
Too
rah,
much.
rah, put it all in one thing.
Yes.
And it just becomes this mess of sound and colors running together, and you've got really no investment in any of
Yes.
them.
Nothing to hold on to.
Yeah, so
It's a major problem. And a lot of the reason why these things fall apart. The other reason, of course, is whitewashing. And there is nothing
100%.
more adapt than Ghost in the Shell.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, famously, Scarlett
Wait,
Johansson.
Scarlett Johansson isn't
Scarlett
Japanese.
Johansson's not Japanese. And what's
What?
even worse about that is that she's like meant to be, even in the movie, she's fucking meant to be an ex-Japanese person who the like creators of the Ghost in the Shell, for lack of a better term, have actually physically whitewashed her into a white person. Like it's as fucked as you can imagine. The character in the film, it's not as if they've just been like, oh, she's white. She was never Japanese. No, she was a runaway Japanese teen who was then literally made into a white person. Like it's like it's
It's real bad.
It's real bad, man.
Because that's pretty bad. Death Note, they attempted to like transport it to America, but I still
Yes.
think it counts as whitewashing because to me, not only like I feel like making it American with a white light added nothing. And I think it was actually detrimental to the storyline.
Battle Angel is a good one, but also Edge of Tomorrow, Tom Cruise. We've mentioned this before.
Oh, that's the best one.
That's the best one.
Great film.
That's off a light novel.
Yeah, it's a good
Was it
time to
at a
kill.
different name,
Yeah,
right?
a good time to kill. Yes. No, all you need is kill.
We did this. A good
Yeah.
time to die hard.
Good time to die hard.
It's a good time to kill.
It's a good time to.
That's that James Bond anime I haven't watched.
All you need is kill. But yeah, so there have been some decent ones. There's been some really good ones in the East. Like apparently, I haven't actually watched it, but from all accounts, the Kenshin live action is meant to be amazing.
Which makes sense because it's a historical kind of
It's a samurai, let's make a samurai
film.
movie.
Like,
Easy. Tokyo Revenge is meant to be good. Just a gang show. Makes sense. Parasite the Maxim apparently is quite good.
Yeah, the simpler the idea, the like.
Yeah, I mean,
and the
there's a
more kind.
bit of-
Obviously, Parasite's not
Parasite's not that
simple.
simple.
Like about like the simpler
Yeah.
the idea. No, I think, but I do think that the ones that I'm not overly surprised, and I think that we should absolutely talk about ones we think would be good after
Yes,
you've talked about.
I was gonna
them.
ask you
Absolutely.
that.
But so before we finish up, I'm going to have to talk about one which is I just finished watching last night, and we have talked about briefly on the show before. Gerald and I mentioned it in the Dark Fantasy episode, but I am of course talking about the Netflix adaptation of Cowboy Bebop. Now, if you remember the last episode where Gerald and I had watched the first 4 episodes, and we were like, not bad. Hey, maybe. The answer is no in the end, because look, and it's interesting because it's not like Death Note where they just completely fucked it and took it and just took all the wrong parts. No, all the parts are there. And there are elements of the show which are quite good. Problem is that, and again, like you can see, even you guys talk, you can hear the writer's room in action. You know what I mean? Like in all of these things. And like it's the same with Bebop, where they've like clearly come at this with love. The aesthetic actually looks pretty good. Yes, perhaps more money could have been put into it. Some of it looks a bit stodgy. Some of it looks a bit janky. And some of it looks like bad cosplay. Sure, but they are they are trying. They're trying to be faithful. And I
There's a
appreciate
love
that.
for the source material.
There is love for it. And for that, I will give it credit.
yeah.
For sure. But what I can't forgive is the dog shit writing. And this is the problem. And the issue is that, again, like I said, when you take something out of a cultural context and, of course, a medium, which is to be hand-drawn, obviously you've got 2 big problems on your hands, right? So number 1 is the aesthetic. Now, they do the aesthetic pretty well. Cultural context, well, Cowboy Bebop isn't so Japanese necessarily. I mean, one of the reasons we all like manga and anime is because of its unique Japaneseness, right? So when you do bring it into the West, you've got translation problems. It's going to happen no matter what. That's why no one's cracked the code yet. But the problem here is Cowboy Bebop works because all these characters are generating ennui, which is listlessness, and they are basically running from their past, and their past isn't the thing. It's always there, and it only gets drip-fed into the show throughout the 26 episodes, and that's why it's so fantastic. In this adaptation, it is everything. Their pasts become their entire stories. And you can see the writer's room, in a Western context being like, it's got to be about like the gangster thing for Spike, and it's like he's got to fight Vicious and like it's all, and then Vicious. Okay. The guy playing Vicious is named Alex Hassel. He's from The Boys. He's done Suburbicon. Now, Vicious works as an idea. That's why he's a mysterious figure and you don't know his motives in the anime. That's why it works. He is quite possibly giving the worst performance of an actor in any high-level show that I've ever seen.
Is it the writing though?
It's definitely part of it.
Yeah. 'Cause that's
So
why
like
it's
he was
showing the
doomed.
actor.
He was doomed from the beginning, and then they try and flesh out Spike's ex-partner Julia. Again, doesn't work. She works as an idea. Like so, all of a sudden,
Those are the things that in the anime I'm the least interested
exactly,
in.
And
exactly.
they're only good because they're mysterious. You
Exactly.
don't know much. And then when it happens, you're kind of like, oh, okay, it was
Now,
kind of basic.
but
It's
when
a
it's
basic
all
storyline.
about
And
them.
it's his sort of thought of where they may or may not be, and
Correct.
this imagination
Yeah.
sort of thing, rather than the actual truth of
Like, I
what
don't
you're.
wanna know.
Yeah, and also like
Too much information.
She's written badly. She's kind of a dud, and so you're like
Yeah.
sitting there, and
You're
you're like, oh,
Spike's so cool. You're like,
really?
what?
Spike, really? Did you do better than this, man? Look, it's just they're trying so hard to make this something that it's just not. They've missed the point.
I
They've missed the
really
whole
wanted this one to
point
work.
of Cowboy Bebop. And like I said, there are moments. And again, they've kind of gone halfway between. There are some like episodes which are basically almost exactly from the anime. So like, you know, the bioterrorists, like with Mum and the tree thing, which turns people into trees and whatnot.
Oh, yeah.
So that episode's there. And that's one of the better episodes because again, it's based off the good source material. But again, once they get bogged down in everyone's backstory, it's like we know Jet's a cop straight away. His backstory gets resolved in like the first 4 episodes. Spike's obviously the whole running way through. Like Faye Valentine, literally her first scene, she walks up to someone and like slaps down her backstory on the table. Like quite literally just goes, "Hi, I'm from Cryofreeze and don't remember my background." Like it's just like straight away. And you're like, what the fuck's this, man? Like,
Yeah,
where's
it's
the
like
mystery?
That's
Where's
like a big reveal in the
a big reveal?
Yeah.
And like the fact that, you know, it was people trying to make do with their lives, running away from their past, but not wanting to confront them. Now, they don't want to confront them in this remake either, but they're confronting them almost immediately. And it's just a different show, man. It's just a different show. The ages are all a bit different, and I kind of don't mind it. Like Jonathan Cho, who plays Spike, it's a good performance. He's 47. He's meant to be 27. So John Cho's from Harold and Kumar and also he's Sulu in Star Trek. The best person is Mustafa Shakir, who plays Jet, and he's from Luke Cage and Brawl in Cell Block 99. He's fantastic. He is Jet, and he's just like you remember him from the anime. Again, they've pushed his backstory a bit too hard as well. He's got a lot of stuff with his daughter, which is a bit on the nose. Again, a bit of a problem. Daniela Pineda plays Faye. She's from Jurassic World and the Vampire Diaries. Good, but like does a decent job of doing something different. It's all just like they kind of go halfway between adapting what the anime did and doing their own thing to mixed results. You know, it's like it's not awful. I didn't get offended by it. I got offended by parts, but outside of that, I was just like, damn, because here we have a production team who are really trying and love this material, but have still cooked it. Now, that being said, it's been cancelled. Got cancelled after 3 weeks of being released. But there was there's a petition being sent around which has 120,000 signatures of people wanting it to come back.
Those always work as well. Which is great. 120,000 people, that'll get him. Actually, after listening to you review this, I watched the first episode and was like, I'm going to watch the rest of this, and I haven't. But I'm probably going to watch it now because it doesn't sound too bad, especially after what I've just gone through and what Charlie's just gone through.
You're not going to watch Death Note based on my review? Are you sure?
I might give that one a miss.
Might give that one a wide berth. It's not terrible.
I just think, like, does it have that sort of, like, that really Western kind of everything's a bit, like, what I like about Cowboy Bebop is it's so hodgepodge. The world is sort of made up of remnants of old worlds. And that's kind of really interesting. Things are just sort of thing together. You fly from one place to the next. It has that Western feel of like this town to that town.
Yeah.
But they're worlds.
Which they
they're not
miss.
horses, they're spacecraft. It's cool.
And it's silly though. The original Cowboy Bebop
Very
has got a
silly.
silly kind of streak to it. And I think I feel like they attempted to do that with this, which might also be a hard sell.
Yeah, well, I mean, as a great reviewer, I can't remember where I read this review, but a line from a review that I read from Reddit from
The same
that
guy,
particular
just
user.
He's killing
This remake says less with more. You know, it's just like it tries to do so much more, but says so much less as a result.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
100%.
Like, because the sweet spot was what was left unsaid. And when you say it all, it's not Cowboy Bebop anymore. It's like, it's based on the universe of Cowboy Bebop, but there's so much of it that's still Cowboy Bebop, which is like, oh, I don't know what this is.
So
you know?
do you think that this could work?
It could have worked.
Actually, as a wider question, do you think it can work? Anime to live action properly?
Ooh.
Is it like, yeah, it's comic books, it's the same, it can work if they throw enough money and passion at it.
Well, interestingly, because in 2008, it was reported that 20th Century Fox had a script by Peter Craig, who wrote The Town, Hunger Games, Mockingjay, Batman, The Batman. And that was in circulation with the intent of developing it into a movie starring Keanu Reeves. And no director was attached, but it missed its 2011 release date and languished in development hell. Watanabe and several of the original writers were initially attached to the project. And in a 2013 Reddit AMA, Keanu Reeves stated that Cowboy Bebop does not look like it's going to happen with me in it. It would cost $500 million to make it. So this is the problem. Like, to do it properly,
there's such big ideas and such high concepts that are so,
it's hard.
Which is why we love anime.
Because I don't mind, obviously I love watching anime. So I'm like, I don't really care if it never cracks it in live action, but I do wonder with people who can't get into anime, it's a shame that a wider audience can't experience what we love and for reasons that, but like, I'm still kind of like, what? We don't necessarily need it to be.
We don't.
I mean, this is what comic book readers would have been saying 30 years ago.
It's true. It's true. It's true.
It could, I think
it's crackable. Cowboy Bebop got semi-close. Like, I would, in all honesty, if I'm going to grade it out of 10, I'm giving it like a 6, 5.5, 6. So it's not terrible. And like I say, it gives me hope that there is potential here because it wasn't that far off, So like, and also and what I did read, I read a stat somewhere that like after the Cowboy Bebop live action came out, Netflix, the anime on Netflix blew up. Like people went bam, straight to the anime, straight up. So that's a good thing. And that's doing its job. You know what I mean? Like, it is drawing people to the source material, which is what we want. And if it's going to do that, great. But it's also, when it's Death Note, going to turn a lot of people off. People are going to be like, I ain't watching this fucking dog shit. So that's the problem.
How embarrassed I was. My housemate, she's the smartest person I fucking know. And she came home from a trip and she was like, oh, we got bored and I heard that you talked about something called Death Note, so we put it on Netflix. And then she was like, it was the worst thing I've ever seen. And then she was like,
that's the flip side, right?
She looked at me and she was like, do you like that show?
you like people fucking on the Death Note?
And I went, do I?
No. Do I?
Uh-huh.
Why was it queued up to that one spot?
Bookmark.
It's a problem, and it's so, I mean, I think it will get done, but the real question is, do you find something like Monster with Guillermo del Toro? That could be fantastic. That could be one that does it. Do you get something like a Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood where someone actually gets it right and adapts it faithfully? Or do you do like a Marvel DC thing where you just take the world of and then run free with it? I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. And I think it's a difficult one because also if you do that second option where you take it, base it on the universe of and take this character and the rules and the story and go and do your own thing, well, you run a risk of pissing off a big ingrained fan base. You know what I mean? And you also piss them off if you adapt it wrong, like if you try and do it faithfully and fuck it up. So it's really hard. It hasn't been done.
I can see a big kids property cracking it. I can see like them doing Naruto and it being
One Piece
massive,
even,
because you think about even Star Wars, it's like, you go back to the prequels and people fucking hate it.
Oh, yeah.
But if you grew up with the prequels, they have that sort of love for
nostalgia,
those sort of weird, janky, kind of massive long shots of
Jar Jar
Binks and stuff like that.
I think I can think of one that I reckon would work pretty easily, and I think it's Steins Gate.
Steins Gate could work very well.
Skate the Infinity.
Hey, now we're talking. That's the big brain kind of thinking we got you on this show for. Let's just go pitch this.
God, Al, what would you want to star in? What live action?
Yeah, what would you want? That's the dream role, man.
I remember when I was young and I was watching Neon Genesis, I was like, they should do this. And now I'm like, do not touch this thing
absolutely not.
with a 10-foot pole.
Oh, no.
It would be the most expensive, depressing bunch of films ever made, I think.
Disaster.
Don't touch that.
No.
I don't know. I mean, there'd be a fair few that I could, that I'd be in the zone for, but I'm not sure what, if anything, that I'm watching that I'd be super interested in seeing live action. I'm enjoying Blue Period. I think that'd be pretty fun.
That'd be cool.
Yeah,
as like a quiet, because there's no weird elements. It's just a show. It's just about loving art.
I mean,
it'd be kind of cool.
Some slice of life. I mean, they've done a Japanese remake of Your Lie in April. Apparently, it's quite good.
Again, we say this every time. Like anime, obviously, is such a giant genre. Any genre could work as film, but
100%.
But it's the big blockbuster shonen ones are what Hollywood have their eye on.
Of course,
and it's like,
I get it.
Who's gonna get it? You know what was good? Speed Racer.
Oh yeah,
by the Wachowski siblings. That was actually genuinely.
Didn't that do badly though?
It did. It tanked, but it's
Absolutely
a fucking
tanked.
sick
Yeah.
film. Watch it again. It's like one of those ones that has a bit of a cult following. Feast for the eyes, insane aesthetically, and people really didn't like it. But I think it was really cool because they kind of made a huge choice with it, and they went, "We're going to make this aesthetically like insane, like as we're watching a live action cartoon. That's how it looks."
Well, I mean, The Matrix is very anime.
Yes.
Heavily influenced. We know this.
Heavily,
you know,
yeah.
like so.
Psychopaths could work. It would just be minority.
Couldn't
Report.
they do
Psychopaths would
sort
work very
of
well.
like a gritty, like Robotech or, you know, a Gundam sort of style show where it's going to be
Max.
like, you'd basically just use the Transformers and build a narrative
Yeah,
in
yeah.
those, because they're massive worlds, but it's
Yeah,
not like, you know, it's, as soon as it gets into the like world politics and geopolitical stuff, you're like, But you could build
Yeah, yeah.
an
And there's so
interesting world.
many stories
totally
set in
could.
that world with Gundam. Like they're all kind of separate. It's just like
Yeah.
huge. So you could. I think Pacific Rim basically tried to do
it.
like
Yeah.
Neon Genesis.
Speaking of Guillermo
really.
del Toro,
Yeah,
and
they
like
did.
it's a except
a
they were
mixed
coming
bag.
from the ocean, not the sky.
Yes.
I kind of enjoyed the mecha fun of it, but obviously we all know that Eva is Eva's not actually about mechas, guys. It's actually about something you might not understand. So,
yeah, sorry, yeah.
You know,
actually-
they're real.
It's actually deeper than that.
It's deeper than that, man.
I was just laughing at Al before because we went to drama school together. That's how we know each other. And I was saying at our drama school there was like the biggest party of the year. This is actually pretty fucked.
in retrospect, yes.
In retrospect, is themed like porn party, and that's the theme. So it's just a theme. Everyone dresses up in parties, and it's like a
Dresses
raw
down, really.
Dresses down.
Pretty debaucherous
and I
time.
remember that I spent most of the night in the corner with Al talking about anime very platonically, whilst drinking a beer. I just be like, "You like Neon Genesis?" like this too. Like everyone else is like, "Woo!" And I'm just like, "Oh yeah, that checks out."
Yeah. Anime people find anime people
You
very
do.
quickly
in
at
the
a
weirdest
party.
circumstances.
At the sexy party.
At the sexy party, yeah.
We stand out. I'm like, "What up?"
Oh man,
Yeah, we were cool.
I wouldn't change it, dude.
nah, dude. Right, okay. Well, Al, thank you so much for coming on, man. It's been so good to have you. I'm so glad we could talk about something that we kind of love and hate. You know, it's
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I've been listening to you guys for a while now, and it's always good. I feel bad because I came on and we all panned these things, but we knew that that's what was going to happen.
it was going to happen. You know,
But yeah, thanks for having me on. It's good fun.
absolute pleasure.
Before you go, we just want to know what your gateway anime was. Gotta ask, I guess this.
It was Neon Genesis. Yeah,
That's a good one.
On VHS, baby.
Oh,
Hey.
Yeah,
damn.
I watched it with a friend when I was 12, 13 and yeah, had a nice little existential. I mean, that's the one that really got me into anime. I was into your Dragon Ball and your
Pokemon and
and all that
course.
stuff before. But yeah, no, that's when I started going down, like looking for the darkest possible animes and I'm still going. I'm sort of going waves though. I'll go off it for a couple of years, then come back and then watch everything. And
It is the way of the anime.
Yeah.
Anyway, Al, thank you so much. That is our podcast for the week. But before we finish up, I'd like to thank a lot of our patrons. I'd like to thank Curtis. I'd like to thank Stuart. I'd like to thank Christian. I'd like to thank Samantha, Caroline, Al. And that's it. So thank you all so much for supporting us. Thank you. And we really appreciate it. It means more than you can understand. It helps us so much with putting this show together. And we'll catch you all next time. See you then.